Folks, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show. The King of Queens, the glider, the rhythm maker, the one who beats the drum to the street rhythm and the drive to the basket. My guest today grew up playing hoops and singing spirituals. It was the love and the camaraderie amongst his peers and mentors that galvanized his polyrhythmic gallops around the keys of Oscar Peterson or the bass of Dave Young. My guest got to where he is today because of a great family. He was going up to Harlem to Sugar Ray Robertson's barbershop, getting lessons in leadership, life, and longevity from heavyweight figures who would saunter over to the Apollo to see the likes of Ruth Brown, Cannonball Adderley, and John Coltrane. He was connected to a family that stretched from Mount Vernon to what seemed like a land of make-believe, sitting under Alvin Jones's drum set, playing the local circuit, shining the shoes of Coleman Hawkins, and sitting in with John Coltrane at 12 years old. The family was intergenerational, built around loyalty, swagger, and a self-determination and drive that was unrelenting in both concept and construction. There were new directions in the urban jungle designed to let the musicians roar with tenacity and a gut-bucket approach about things that people don't like to talk about much anymore. George Benson, Charles Covington, Ronnie Cooper, Benny Maupin, and Big John Patton. It was like a hot potato with a little salt, butter, and a dash of sour cream. Somewhere Horace Silver is smiling because I started my week interviewing Billy Cobham, and I get to wrap it up with the King of Queens, Alvin Queen. Welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
A pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here, Jake, with you to speak with you after so many years.
Yeah, we've known each other for so many years.
Oh, man, it's more than so many years. It's almost just like, it's got to be almost more, 40, 50 years.
It's, yeah,
we're going back to Birdland.
Well, we're going back to leadership. We're going back towards, Alvin's been a real conduit to a confidence for me, driving my points across using social media. And I can only assume it's because these are the kind of values that were resonating with you when you were growing up in Harlem. And that's really what my show was about. The difference is I'm actually asking master musicians and people that have really never been asked to pontificate on these types of things. And I think it's that's what my mission is, and that's the spiritual train right there.
Well, I think it's a wonderful admission because there is I believe that there's that link of the music, which a lot of people don't, realize that. And, when you grow up in the middle of that and all different types of people, they were very generous at that time and they would help each other. And you get to a certain age and you look and see who it really was, you don't believe it, you see?
That's right.
So it's very helpful, and, I'm very happy that you're here with the show because I have shared my story many times, and a lot of people have called it lies and things like that, and particularly, and what I like about it, the more comes out. I was in Monterey, California, and I remember that same period down at Birdland, at the corner of the world, when I was 11, 12 years old back there, and sitting in with Train, and I had a chance to run into Miss Shirley Jones, who's out there in, I think she's Sacramento, and, just all the little things would make things work, and, I'm so blessed to be able to see that there's certain people around what has so much knowledge based on my particular life story. Because even you shared something with me, and you said, oh man, I remember you at Berlin. I said, whoa, wait a minute here. You see?
Well,
so it goes back, and there was Marvin Boogaloo Smith was there, Steve Steve Habits was there. And, at that time, they had drum tables. Pee Wee Marquette would tell you, just be quiet and go sit at your table.
Mm-hmm.
And we would all get under Alvin Jones and Art Blakey and Max Roach, and we would learn things. You see?
Well, but I mean, and part of it is just because of the way society has changed. I mean, there is, and in many ways, it's the people's fault. I mean, it's become much more of a visual society. And back when you were growing up, the wide open capacity of the radio, the fact that music was taught, instrumental music was not frowned upon, improvisational music was considered vogue. And so people had better listening skills. And then, of course, you just put that with sort of the superhuman music of Train and Alvin. And, how could you not stare at that? But you know what? I see a lot of today's youth. I mean, I got 2 young daughters. I think there's the magic's still alive. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying I see a lot of zombies right now, That's not Alvin, I mean, that's that, and that's okay. I mean, that's sociology. That's part of the underbelly of the show. I mean, Billy Cobham said it best. He's like, this is philosophy. This is higher education, and I'm glad and I feel blessed to be able to do it with your generation, because we lost a couple of generations, and I've just learned that through. I've learned that through transcribing hundreds of hours of audio. With my thumbs and an iPhone. I don't think anybody else could do that in the world.
Well, you're that link. I mean, what would we do without you? Mm. You were there. You know the story. You see?
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. Now I get it. Yeah.
So you know the story, and we're the missing pieces which help you put the story together. You see? So the whole thing about it is like, when you got Blue Note records, you got Blue Note records. When you got Impulse, you got Impulse.
That's right.
And it was like a train track. And the train track was all about, once we got on that train track, we all had to be creative coming from a certain source. You see? Mm-hmm. And there were expansions, but there were many expansions. I believe things started changing around that time when John Coltrane came in and Miles Davis, because I feel that I was able to see the split in the rhythms, because I saw Tony Williams, that was one generation, but I saw Elvin Jones, another generation. And before that, we were drummers who we had to learn how to be disciplined, and when you played good time, you would always give you a drum solo or something. But I was told mostly to play time and stop dropping those bombs. You see? And that,
right. That's
the way we were conditioned that the bass player and the drummer worked together. They had to lock together. That was the heart of the band. And you learn that way when you heard Buddy Rich, you heard Ed Thigpen, you heard Papa Joe Jones. You always heard a very strong bass drum. You see?
Absolutely. No, you're. I mean, this is what my mind is already blown. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I hear, and then you just it comes. It's one thing to have chops, but it comes from the soul, and to know that guys like Dick Burke and you and Alvin, just that propensity to burn. Mickey Roker, you burn. So and that's missing with the advent of, you take away that humanity within the drum machine, and all of a sudden you got machines making music and there's no soul inside a machine.
But you have to understand, the education at that time was the bandstand. You see? Mm-hmm. And the bandstand was all about, I remember at Birdland, man, when they would have 5 drummers sitting around the club. If you couldn't accomplish it, or you couldn't bring this band to that high level of what they consider orgasm or whatever it was, if you couldn't bring it to that level, then the next guy would have your gig. Mm-hmm. You see, you learned how to play dynamically. You didn't have all this electrical amplification then. You didn't have all of that. and they would tell me, "Hey, Queen, can you hear the piano?" "No, I can't hear the piano." "You're playing too loud." You had to play with the same energy, but you had to dynamically play like in someone's living room. You had to know exactly how to play up and down, but we have a scene now where, it's a lot of amplification, which makes the sound for the musician. So if he has to learn how to play dynamically, he can't get it down because he's so used to having some form of help. You see, so it's just that I remember Birdland. I remember the first guy I saw was the first guys I really saw with the piggyback bass, the Ampeg bass.
Right.
Was back there. A lot of guys, the Latin cats, were using it, but the first one I saw use it in the jazz world was Jimmy Barrett. That was the first one I seen him use it. I believe with Max Roach.
Sure. I remember that album.
But even back then, Birdland, I don't remember. I never heard Jimmy Garrison. I only heard him, singing. And Alvin and Train always had it. And McCoy, was sitting there. He would start the melody up, and Train would have it for 30 minutes. Him and Alvin. I never heard much of Garrison. And a lot of these guys had to use cat guts. And when you heard Wilbur Ware and all of them in the club, man, they'd pull a string in the back of the club, and the bottles on the bar would rattle.
There was like Bobby Pierce, a great piano player. He said to me that each generation that comes is just not as strong as the one before, and it's like sort of like I look at I'm 35. I caught the end of the 70s, even though I wasn't really aware of what was going on. And then I look at it now, Alvin, and I say, my gosh, this is my mission, is for Alvin Queen to tell me about being able to watch someone play an instrument, communicate non-verbally for a half hour at a time. What were the things that you learned, that you put in your system, that you still hold true today, from being able to see and witness that kind of security and strength and love?
Well, what I see is, particularly, it's hard. It's a definition, and it's a definition of a meaning, and through that instrument, everybody needs to recognize what instrument they play and exactly what that instrument it's supposed to say. It's like a bass supposed to be a fat sound. The drum, you're supposed to be rhythm. I'm not a soloist. I'm a swinger. You see? So that means the record could be made today, and they're not gonna miss the solo, but they would miss the swing if I took the groove out of it. You see? So it's hard to purify that, but that's my biggest goal, man. After all these years, is to be able to nowadays to find somebody who likes to play like that.
Well,
everybody's a composer today. You see?
Yeah, there was an element of. There were reasons behind that. And again, it's the thing I wanted to ask you about. Can you talk, for the record, about this album that you did at 12 years old that was actually never released on record?
Yes, I can.
Please go. What happened
with that, from the Birdland days, I played Gretsch Drum Night. A guy was representing me, Andy Laulino, from Mount Vernon, New York. He decided to be my manager also, so that I was not taken advantage of. Okay? Some company came up with some money, and they said I was the youngest one, and it was Tony Williams, and we were the two youngest out there at that time. And Miles had Tony. Okay? So what they wanted to do, they came up with this money from, I remember we did it at Nola Studio or something like that. And this guy, Andy Laulino, hired Joe Newman as the musical director. Okay? And Joe Newman hired Zoot Sims on tenor saxophone. He hired Jones on piano, and he hired Art Davis on bass. Okay? We did the record, we got together, we managed to do the record, but half of the record could not be complete because Hank Jones had a contract at NBC. He could not make the other half of the record. So what they had to do, that's when Hank Jones got Hal Mayburn. So I met Hal Mayburn, he was 22 years old, 25.
Okay, so Mayburn was 25. You were 12. I did not realize, King of Queens, that you and Tony Williams were the same generation.
No, Tony. I think Tony was 3 or 4 years older than me.
Well, I consider generation 10 years. What I'm trying to say is you guys were somewhat peers, because you said something really interesting before. I wanted to go. We're kind of all over this right now, but it's really fascinating. The two styles of drumming. You were talking about the rhythmic, the dynamics versus, and you used two guys as examples, Tony Williams and somebody else. What was that fissure about? There was two different ways to go, because you still see guys like yourself able to swing so hard. Where has that element, that pulsating rhythm, where has that gone?
Well, the rhythm is that rhythm. See, we have that old bandstand thing, and we have nowadays the conservatory. Okay.
Right.
And what has happened is, it's to me, it's more about arrangements. It's not finding a groove. I do some stuff sometime with a few people, and I'm reading more. I got to concentrate more on the music than what's really coming out of my heart, because I'm scared that maybe I might make a mistake or something. You see? Mm-hmm. So that means when you do 7/4 with 2 bars of 4/4 and all of that, it's something you got to be conscious of all the time. Then it starts, it starts going in another direction. But the way I grew up was to take the cotton out of my ears and put it in my mouth, shut up, listen, and follow. Every major band I've been with is about having big ears. It's not about how much you can read. I was with Horace Silver. I never saw any music.
Right.
You see?
Right.
I was with Oscar. I never seen any. And all the major guys, with Niels Peterson, Kenny Drew, I was just told to listen and follow. You see? So that means you're left out in the highway, and you better know what to do. So that's, it was right on the spot. That answers who that great musician is. If you walk in, a guy I've seen Harry Sweet Edison, and the guy said, what key is it? He said, the temple's right here. And he counted off and started playing. Lockjaw Davis, they were the same. You were forced to open your ears and listen. You want to know what key it is? You'll hear it.
Yeah, but you're also talking about...
Another educational way of the way things go. Bandstand is a language, and you have to have some form of experience of playing with people. Then you have the school thing, you have the educational thing, but when you got both things going on, it's perfect. You see?
Well, I also think that the reality is such that just the idea that in Mount Vernon there were like 8 clubs within 6 blocks. The town was like really small. Live music was at a premium, and there was this blending. The hand drums were becoming part of jazz, and the thesaurus of scales, Indian music, raga music, all this blending at the time. And like Ron Carter said, he's like, people just want to put their high definition headphones on, and they got their high definition equipment, and they stay at home. They prefer to stay at home more. And then I remember this the idea that like the bars, the late night jam sessions that Queen attended, and Walter Bishop Jr. and all the cats, those don't exist anymore because of people like Mothers Against Drunk Driving, because their kids were getting slaughtered going home at 4:35 in the morning. Even this was all over the country. So you cut down that nightlife, you become more litigious as a society. And then, obviously, integration, which is something I really wanted to ask you about, is tell me a little bit about about integration and how the system has actually maybe failed us in some ways, based on the fact that I perceive, again, I was not alive, but while there might have been more overt prejudice, okay, it seemed to me that there was more solidarity within the people, whereas today, with integration, we're all together, and nobody really has the time because we move too fast, or the patience, or the energy, or the fear of other cultures. Before, it just seemed just extrapolate on that, because, I've just been riffing for a while. Go ahead.
Well, the whole thing about it, years ago, no matter what happened, it was about love. Remember that first. All right? So that means when you had black musicians and you had white musicians, they had to be together to really, in one way, to love each other, and they wanted to play music together. They didn't care. That was one of the biggest issues then. That the art world, they had their differences, but when you saw jazz at the Philharmonic, you saw Oscar Peterson, you saw Buddy Rich, you saw Stan Getz, you saw Lester Young, you saw Red Rodney, you saw so many different people on that bandstand. And Norman, he made it possible where it was all put together.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one stopped the stuff where you play for two separate audiences. He said, no, we don't play for one audience, and it's going to be mixed. You see?
Oh, yeah.
So the thing about it, we accomplished a lot. We helped each other at that time. And all of the racial stuff was going on. I remember clubs, I have worked right in New Jersey, where you can go in the back, you can entertain. Okay? And then what happens when people want to buy you drinks, they sent the drinks to the band room. But you weren't present in that audience with the people. They would send it to the band room to you. I've had places in the Catskill Mountains. I lived right in Mount Vernon, where the railroad tracks separated it. You had Fleetwood, you had Bronxville, you didn't go there. You didn't belong in that area. You see? So the most important thing, we had clubs in Mount Vernon area, and my father and another guy, Boston Blackie, they were the Sorrentino brothers, a group which was very nice, and they owned all the clubs. But all the managers of those clubs were black.
Right.
Managers. And the most important thing, you can walk one block or two blocks from each other, and they had jazz organ trios all over the place.
Unreal.
And the white guys they would come over and play.
Now I'm back there with you again. With you in Mount Vernon. Listen, that's the other thing. You had organs in bars. You had organ music coming into you could hear this stuff. When people talk about the fact that Big Black had a month-long engagement at the Both And Club in San Francisco, it's the idea of being able to see this live in the right environment. I think that in some ways, the melodic invention in jazz, has done itself. There was just an element of it doesn't have to be perfect. It's done from love. And
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and what I wanted to get back to, so the railroad tracks divide Mount Vernon. There were clubs that said, go back, don't be seen with this audience, come and play, but just leave, and don't be seen. How then, the love was there because there was solidarity there, because you just were staring in the face and fighting the ignorance of that kind of overt prejudice. Is that right?
That's right. These guys, I knew. And see what happens. I grew up near the projects. I grew up near the project when there were white people who were poor. They were in the projects. I used to eat lunch with them every day. Come home from school. So there were certain areas which were supposed to be in the good area, and certain areas which were supposed to be in the bad area. If you lived in the bad area, then you went over there to that school. You see? So once you get used to people being around who treated you nice, then they were in. They didn't have any problems. And we used to go all over Harlem. I'm telling you, man, it was organ clubs all over Harlem. And when one guy take a break, you would walk to the next club. Or if you were playing, took a break, you would walk to the next club. When he took a break, he would walk down and listen to you. There was just music all over the place. If you needed a gig, they look at you and say, "Hey kid, what are you doing next week? Grant Green or something." "Hey, I ain't doing nothing. You got a suit?" "Yeah, I got a suit." "You got your drums?" "Yeah, I got my drums." "Meet me here tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock. So you meet him there at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You got Grant Green, John Patton's putting his organ in the van, in the U-Haul, and you put your drums, put your suitcase in there, and you get in there. We go to Pittsburgh, or we go to Milwaukee, or we go to Detroit, or something like that. You used to be able to work 5 weeks from New York City all the way to California and work all the way back. You used to be able to do that.
Tell me about, at the time, there was enough, it wasn't that there was enough work, it was that society understood that musicianship should be compensated as a livelihood. How did that change?
Well, man, it's very hard to say how it changed. Because,
but what I'm trying to, I just want to say that what you're talking about is, I mean, the stories, you're filling up the story box with Grant and John, Big John. I mean, that we need to discuss. But it's like the idea that lower cost of living. I mean, there was just clubs all over the place, so you could play and make ends meet. But a lot of musicians today, in fairness, younger musicians. Cats that are just trying to put their head down. I mean, there is not that kind of elasticity within the country, and that says to me that the powers that be don't believe that it's a livelihood. That art should just be, you throw them a couple of dimes.
Yeah, but it wasn't like that. When I was with Horace Silver, Randy Brecker, and all of them, you didn't have much of a salary, $300-400. But the hotel room for the week was $67.
That's right. That's right.
If you drink every night, your bar tab is $35-40. So the economy, and if you really look at every club, every major club in New York, when I was around, they had 2 bands in it. They had the opening act, and they had the closing act. When I was there at Birdland, I was there during the live recording what John Coltrane did. And Alice McLeod at the time, she was playing piano for the opening act with Terry Gibbs.
On Vibes.
Then John Coltrane came on. But every club, you just about had 2 bands in there. That's why you would start at 9 o'clock at night, and that went on to 3, 4 in the morning. Huh. Now you finish at 10 to 11 o'clock. You see, so when you see how the scene is, it's changed.
Right, and $67 a night would be cheap in nowadays too. I mean, just for the hotel and the cost of living.
What $67 was, a lot of times if we couldn't stay in a hotel or something like that, they had rooming houses. I would go up to the Piffot Hotel with Jimmy McGriff and Jack McDuff and George Benson. And they had a club called Piffot in Rochester, New York. And Grover and Darrell, that's before they went to New York. Grover Washington, Darrell Washington, the drummer's brother.
Right.
And we used to play there, but there used to be a house, Mrs. Myers, and there was a rooming house there. And she rented us rooms, and we stayed there. You see, but a lot of that, then they had the Royal Arms up in Buffalo, where I used to stay. But they would all be $60, $67, $75 or something like that for the whole week. and that right across the street was the Pine and Grill, and they were unknown at the time, but they became famous as the Ohio Players. You see?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Then there was another club called BMO's where I worked there with George Benson. It was a snowstorm, and B.B. King came in one night during that snowstorm, and the guy said, "It doesn't make sense to play, just take it off." And B.B. had told George, he said, "George, you change your little pattern and rhythm around there, and, you know, you will become successful with that." That's when Breezing came out. You see? So it was just all those little clubs. I don't know how we managed to get that, but I mean, for the group, it was normally $200 or $300 a night or something like that. It wasn't much money.
If you look at the ego of the Titans, you know, were there entourages? Were there security guards blocking 3 exits that cost the taxpayers money and for the fanfare? I know the answer, but what I'm trying to say is you're talking about a time when there was all this, just trading and sharing amongst people that now we've heightened that individual to a absurd level beyond human, and so you have these gawkers, and I don't doubt that Train and I'm sure that they had fans, but they carried themselves a different way. Can you talk a little bit about it?
What's the main subject? I couldn't hear you that well.
I just want you to talk about how guys like Alvin and Train, how they carried themselves and how they controlled their ego.
Well, man, I'm gonna tell you something. There was very little ego back there. There was, that I only saw that after the real Miles Davis and Tony Williams days and stuff like that. That's when I saw that.
Mm-hmm.
I never really saw anything like that. I just, Alvin took me in as a father. John Coltrane take you in as a father. Wes Montgomery, all the kids, they recognized who the kid was. Come and give them a Coca-Cola. Sit down and learn. It wasn't about that. Charlie Mingus wasn't about that. Charlie Mingus, the background of everybody was you don't talk back to your father. You don't do it here. You don't do it at home. You're not doing it here. That's the whole attitude. You see? But ego, I didn't see much of that. I saw it more in a generation as I got older and started growing up, more among the younger generation. But I never seen that.
I know that. That's what I'm saying is you're spot on. So why did the ego become? Why did people become less secure? And why did that false sense of ego come into play?
Well, because the ego came into play, but to me, it seemed like the music level fell apart.
What does that talk? Please extrapolate on that.
It seems like we all have insecurity to a certain degree.
Right.
And sometimes, if you don't reach a certain level, some people will use their ego to put themselves in that level, in that certain position.
Mm-hmm.
You see, I don't say, I can only speak for myself. There was no reason for me to go in the ego way. I was very proud of what I accomplished, and I never even realized what I have accomplished. It took me years to realize that. Because they were all friends. We did all things together. If you had an ego, that means I'm casting them, what they're giving me out.
Right.
You see, so that means your history, what you're saying, I'm willing to accept all of that, and you're helping me put the pieces together because I can't remember all of it.
But it also
this is what. Anytime I run into an ego situation, I get rid of it.
Right. I mean, you talk about this band of brothers. You guys are doing things as friends, and of course, the greatest stuff comes when you're doing it for the right reasons. That's really what I'm trying to get at is there were tight bands, the bands that you were in with with Lonnie Smith and George Benson and Gary Bartz played with Howard King, and Hubert Eves and Tower of Power was on the West Coast, and Mwadishi and Mahavishnu. There were you could see the solidarity because the band stayed together. And that's the other thing is you see a lot of hired guns now, a lot of independent contractors, not just in music. You see them in Iraq, you see them in Syria, and we're kind of a lone wolf kind of country now. And I say I don't like that too much.
Well, the whole problem you have today, Jake, is you got to realize bands don't stay together like they used to stay together.
Because of ego.
John Coltrane, Art Blakey, Miles Davis, those bands were 5-10 years together. Horace Silver, 5-10 years together. And the thing about it, what those bands did, they didn't rehearse on the bandstand. They rehearsed all day long. And they went to the gig that night. If they couldn't remember the music, they wouldn't play that song that night. They rehearsed the next day again. They all were well-rehearsed bands. You never seen a guy have a band, and the big bands, you always seen music. You always seen music at the big bands. But with small groups, trios, or quintet, you never seen all that music before. Because not a lot of times the bands are not permanent. The music is a roadmap, but you're supposed to remember that. You're supposed to be able to hear that, remember that.
Mm-hmm.
I learned Oscar Peterson's repertoire in 2 weeks. You see, so the thing about it is just that I'm seeing something totally now I've never seen before.
Which is
I
what?
went to a jam session once.
Right.
I don't say where. There was music all over the place. Singers were passing their charts out. I said, what is this? A jam session is to try to remember the changes and play off the changes. And older guys would always say, you want some of this? No, I'm going to lay out because I don't know the bridge that well. I'll listen to this guy play the bridge. I'll learn it. And on the next thing, I'll take some after this. That's what the jam session was, not to come in and to change it. It was when you came into a jam session, that meant you came in to come to the level of what those musicians on the stage were at. You see? So, I mean, jam is totally different. They're having a rehearsal. They're rehearsing their own music.
Right. but we're caught also, this is just another theme of the Jake Feinberg Show, but it's terminology. And I go back to the word jazz itself. And, did you guys, when you were making music, did you ever refer to it as jazz?
Well, I never really, it was never really a big issue. It has always been not a clean word.
Well, what I'm saying is I've talked to enough cats to say they're just like, I never called it jazz once. Ever. And I'm just like, my God, the barriers that have been put up in music is just stunning. And it's crippled the ability for any type of creativity and invention. You go back to Cannonball, guy you played with or you saw. Did you play with Cannon?
No, but
But my point is that
Cannon. Last time I saw Cannon was at the Jazz. No, I saw him when I joined Horace Silver, 1969, at the Jazz Workshop.
I'm just saying that
because Lula Hayes was still in there. They were closing down that night, and we were opening up the following night.
And what band were you in at that time?
I was with Horace Silver, Vinnie Maupin, Randy Brecker, and John B. Williams.
Right, John B. Williams.
I took Billy Cobham's place. It was September 1969.
What a beautiful rhythm section. But you guys didn't. Horace would just talk about it as it would be music, and you were, that's the point. Is that idiomatic labels. People, the word was already a dirty word when you were growing up. And now I think it's just more perverted than anything else. It's just been tortured into whatever people want to believe. People are making up their own definitions of the word, and I don't even know if it was the right word in the first place.
Well, it has been always associated with black blues, poorhouse music. When movies came out, you heard a lot of murder movies or whatever, some jazz,
Right.
or whatever it is. But it's a label there. It's a label for a certain reason, and certain you couldn't even. I had a lady I did an interview one time, and a lady, she said, they call it devil music or whatever they did.
Hate music,
and I said, Miss, what do you have against the music or me or whatever it is? Because my son wanted to play it, and I wouldn't allow him to play it, and now he hates me to the day. I said, well, Miss, that's your problem. That's the problem right there. I didn't do nothing to you. You see?
Yeah.
So the thing about it, the association, they don't want to say what the association is, but there was a lot of schools at one time, they wouldn't have this form of music in there. You see?
Mm-hmm.
They would not have it in there. And now it's gotten to be the whole business. The whole business is what they consider, they call it as jazz. But when you go back and look through the history over it, it was just associated, supposed to have been more like associated with the wrong people. That's what that was all about. You see?
That's right.
Or devil music or whatever it is, or it's like you say gospel music or the blues or the devil. I went and did a gig one time, I remember, in Russia, in Odessa, Kiev, over there, and right across the top of the news table, this evening, the best devil music is in town.
Oh, man. No, it's funny. I was talking to...
I've been on this earth so long, man. I done seen so much.
Bless you, man, for being able to transmit this stuff, because that's what it's about. I mean, I'm having a ball. Dr. John, I was transcribing the interview I did with him, and he talked in Louisiana. He would play at this strip club, and all these sailors they'd be docking there, and they'd come from all over, and they'd come to this strip club, and it was just a wild place. And he said a lot of the strippers would start off their acts with a Duke Ellington tune. And I mean, and so in my mind, it's like, well, now I'm beginning to see the seedlings of how this music sort of, like Duke Ellington, I mean, just incredible orchestra, and yet because it's being played with beautiful women dancing naked, it has that's where some of the connotation came from, and it's fascinating to me that like we talked about terminology, and today what is a jam session today sounds more like a really big car wreck, whereas in the past, where
well, it's a spirituality. If there's anybody who see the problem you have, everybody studies John Coltrane. You understand what I'm talking about?
Right.
But but the spirit is gone. You see what I'm talking about? So what I saw, very few people saw that. And Alvin Jones told me one day, just remember you were there. Just remember the warm feeling of that place. You were there. And it's like with Oscar Peterson or Kenny Drew or all of Niels Peterson, all the guys who are gone. All I can remember is I was there, what they gave me. Just remember what they gave you. It's treasure. You can't get that again. And you can explain it, but you can't. It's hard to share, to put people in that environment.
That's right.
That's why when they do a movie, they try to use the setting of what it was all about.
Yeah, and that's right.
Huh?
No, I think that's why my question before was it's hard to answer what it was like to witness this stuff, because it was, you probably don't, you remember you were there, like Alvin said, just remember you were here. And because the details are going to be murky because you're right in the moment. And we're not in the moment anymore as a society. We're projecting into the future. What's the next step?
Well, you got a whole thing, everybody is reading books. Everybody goes by, somebody read a book, so they go and repeat what they read in the book.
No, and that is
so
yeah.
If I want to know something about, Clark Terry, or if I want to know something about an older musician, I'm not going to read a book on him. I'm going to him. This is one of the biggest problems. It's like Scott Hamilton. Everybody says Scott said, yeah, well, Scott, you play like this and such. He said, don't ask me questions. He said, go to the source of what I'm all about. Go to Prince. Go to Leslie Young.
Right.
Listening, I said, it's beautiful listening to me, but this ain't me. I'm influenced by somebody. It's like I'm influenced by Art Blakey. I'm influenced by Alvin Jones. Those were my greatest. And then Tony was new. I love the style that Tony has. I'm influenced somebody, but I have developed something through the years. You see?
That's right. That's right.
So there's a source to it, and you go listen to. Don't start off with John Coltrane. Go back to Eddie Clean Ed Vincent, where he started with Eddie Clean Ed Vincent. Johnny Griffin, I have a record with Johnny Griffin and Randy Wilson playing the boogie woogie. So, so I mean, all of these, I did all of these gigs. I did playing backbeat blues. I played in the church in the choir. Okay, I played. We all had processes at that time when we were putting lye and potatoes in our head, straightening our hair to make it look smooth, and we were clean. We had, I come up during that day, when Wilson Pickett and all those. I went all through that.
Right.
And so those are cycles that you have to go through because that's where it was. They were dancing to the jazz. Then they had the organ. Then they had Wilson Pickett and James Brown and the Afros, and those are cycles we went through. You see? So there was, you had to play that. You didn't only play. I didn't only play jazz. I mean, I've had to play in the church, whether I like it or not.
I don't have.
So it's all rooted. It's all combined. If you listen to gospel music, if you listen to Dinah Washington. Listen to the beat on What a Difference a Day Made. That same beat is very popular today. It's no different with the beat. That beat, that's a backbeat. That's a triplet backbeat. Those gospel beats, James Cleveland, all those records which Hobb did, John Bowden, the Swan Silvertones, all of Shirley Caesar's records. I did all of those records. At that time, the musician didn't get credit. I was there with Scepter Records. Dionne Warwick was at that label at the time, and Jimmy Boyd, the manager for Johnny Hammond Smith, Groove Holmes, George Benson, Lonnie Smith, the manager, Jimmy Boyd, got that gig for me there at Scepter Records. It was Hobb label. So I did all those gospel albums. And I knew that from the church. James Cleveland, all that. That's how I was able to do that. You see, at that time, if there wasn't a jazz gig, there was a studio gig, but the studio gig, the staff was, it was $65 for half a session. That's 3 hours at that time.
And I mean, and no artistic accreditation on the record itself. It's just shocking to me. So in some ways,
there was no credit for it.
Oh, I mean that. But see, I can speak to you being a completely different generation. People that are hungry for identities in some ways, but wanting to do it the right way. And I would be incensed, but yet you looked at it as just, my repertoire is getting better. That's the big word now. Billy talked about it.
The whole thing. You look at it like this, Jake.
Yeah.
I've been with the best of musicians, from Tolliver all through Europe, Stanley Cowell. I've been, with Benny Wallace, Hangout Buddy Jeff Grover. I've been through all the best of it, okay? I have always produced my own records. Number one, I opened a record label, 1980, and I recorded 17 titles, okay? Even Ray Drummond and Branford Marcellus I got on there, okay? I got Ronnie Matthews. I got Junior Mance.
Beautiful.
I got Bill Saxton. I got John Hicks, okay? Mm-hmm. Nothing, I was never picked up. I invested most of my stuff in myself, okay? I have a repertoire for over 50 years. All right? But where is that first-class CBS sponsorship? It's not there. I was talking with a guy today who taught me, Andy Lalino, okay? And I've been with Andy I've known Andy for over 50 years, okay? And the thing about it, you reach a certain thing in life. I mean, what do I have to do when you go on the internet and you got 8,000 pages or whatever? You see? So you can see that the market is turned around. Something's not right. You see? So I don't let that be my problem. That's not my problem. I know what I did. I know the experience I've been through, and I'm happy for who I am today. And I'm very happy that I have some wisdom, a whole lot of it.
Oh my gosh, you did, and it's funny. I was going to open the show by asking you why the heck are you so darn happy, and that's it. I mean, you clarified it perfectly. You're happy who you are because your resume is astounding. But a lot of times with these cats, and you're one of them, the cats that you just rattled off there, I never met them, never knew them, never saw them play. Hicks, Junior Mance, those cats like yourself, master musicians, better human beings. And the market's turned around.
Well, that's the whole thing. Is you have to open up a door for those who respect you and who's willing to accept a gift you have to offer.
Absolutely.
You see? And that's why, because everybody speaks like Oscar Peterson, oh, he's rough, he's this, and no. Oscar is a gentle human being. And Oscar, underneath, you really got to know him. He's a dad. He's a father. And respect me like I'm your father, and you don't have any problem. I had no problem with Oscar. I wheel him around with the wheelchair. I go in the bathroom, hey, LP, you want some ice cream? No, my man, I'm okay, so. And that's how I got into photography. We would sit there 4 or 5 hours a day and just shoot pictures of flowers and stuff. You see? So the most important thing, everybody said, man, how do you get along? I said, I don't have no problem with it. And if he starts, I don't hear it. He starts because it's miserable. Something's bothering him inside. You see? Oscar has always been a very independent person. And after he had the stroke and all of that, it was very hard for him to deal with a whole lot. And more so ever, think about all of his generation, Louis Armstrong, Ella Fitzgerald, Ray Brown, or Norman Grant, all of those people who he created and they created him are dead. So there's a loneliness inside, A lot of people I came up with Dick Burke. I came up with Jane Getz. I came up with John Miller. I came up with Tony Scott. I come up with Walter Bishop, J.C. Moses, Reggie Johnson. All of these people were 10 or 15 years older than me. You see, so the thing about it is just that when you see a certain amount of people disappear, you be saying, whoa. But then, see, we had a thing then. Anybody was able to play your music. Nowadays, you can bring people in, you say, hey, man, what is happening? What are you doing? What's going on over there? Because it was about making this gig and fitting in. If you fit in, your name went around.
But I think,
hey, man, get him. This cat is cooking. This cat is bad. But the thing about it, if you made one bad impression and your music, or you played out of tune or anything, that went all over the city. People knew not to hire that one. You see?
Tell me.
That's why you did things to your best of the level. You did things, and if a guy had a drinking problem or he had a drug problem, you say, come on, man. Come on, let me take you down the street and get you a sandwich or something. Get yourself together, man. Get yourself, what's going on? Problems? Yeah, I was said, well, look, man, we'll help you, but we ain't going through this. We're not going to go through this. You see? So you had guys, but you tried to understand people. I saw it all. I was right in the middle of all. I grew up as a kid in it.
Right. No, I mean,
So
there was this
the thing
level.
about it,
Yeah.
I know how to pick up. My feeling is more with a bum in the street. I know how he feels. You see, but the next person has to tell me how they feel, because you can dress up, you can have a briefcase, and you can keep that secret to yourself, how you really feel.
Mm-hmm.
But the bum in that street, he's not dressed up. He's down and out. And if you ask him how he feels, you can look at him, smell him, and see how he feels. That's where you grow. He can grow from that right there. You see? So that's how times go. That means when you see the guy in the street like that, that's what the blues is. He's got the blues. He's not talking about climbing in the woman's bed. He's not talking about filthy anything. He says, sir, I'm just trying to survive. I'm hungry. That's the blues. And this is something in life that you have to deal with when you're in the music world, the blues. Because every month, you might not be able to pay that rent. So do you love it that much that you stay with it, or you going to work in the post office? You got your choice.
That's right.
So you got winners. You got guys who stayed with it. I stayed with it. I refused all the rest, and I said, I did bad in New York. Things weren't going that well for me. I said, I'm going to Europe. I'm getting out of here. And everybody thought it was a joke. I left, and I built a whole new life. Ready to come, I did everything. Had a couple problems to stop the problem. You see? But in the environment of New York, I grew up in that environment. So, I used to step over these people every morning going to school or whatever. So, that was more normal for me. But as time go on, the true person, I like the true person. If you tell me you do bad, you need help, and you're not going to hit me in the head or anything, then I'm there to help you. That's the way I was. And that's the way they all came to me. But, God bless Niels Pedersen. It was Niels Pedersen would put me in the hands of Kenny True. Ed Thigpen was leaving the group, so Kenny said, well, Niels, who should we get? He said, man, get Alvin Queen. And he got me in that group.
How did you guys...
And the Japanese producers and stuff didn't want me in there, but Neil said, if Alvin leaves, I'm leaving. And he did the same with Oscar Peterson. How
did you... So, with Kenny Drew, how did Niles know you prior to? You didn't play with Oscar till after Kenny. When did you guys first cross paths?
Me and Oscar crossed paths.
No, you and Niles.
Huh?
You and Mr. Peterson.
Well, Oscar heard about me in the 80s.
Right.
And there was a gig in Bern, Switzerland at Jalen's Club, and they moved the Rosendorf in there for one day. I was working there with Junior Mance and Martin Rivera. Then Oscar was there at the bar, so I said, hey, how you doing, Mr. Peterson? He said, Oscar. I said, how you doing, Oscar? And we took some pictures. And Oscar claimed he heard about me for many, many years, but at that time I was drinking and doing different things and moving all around, and he said, I don't want no trouble in the group. So for years, I had more like a little reputation there. And then Oscar was going to make a change. So he made a change, and then he said, Niels, who do you want to get? So Neil said, Alvin Queen. So he said, no, Niels, I don't want no problem in the group, and so on, so on, so on. So Neil said, I guarantee you, he's cool. But Niels, I heard so and so and so. Neil said, Oscar, that was 30 years ago. Alvin's clean as a whistle. He said, okay, man, I'll try him. Do you have a phone number for him? So Neil said, yeah, here's the phone number. So he called me up. They had just come back from somewhere. And I just came in from Czechoslovakia or somewhere, and I got here, and I was tired. So Neil said, Alvin, I want you to do me a favor. I said, what is the favor? He said, man, look, we've been together for 10 or 15 years, because I was playing with Niels' group. It was me, Niels, and Ulf Arcadius. And we do tours all over Scandinavia. So he said, I want you to do me a favor. I said, well, what's the favor? He said, man, look, Martin is no longer with Oscar, and I just want you to come and join the group. So I said, Niels, look, Oscar is rough. I don't feel like going through that at my age. I really don't feel like dealing with Oscar. So he said, well, man, what did you do with Oscar? What did you do to Oscar? I said, I didn't do nothing. He said, well, he ain't got no reason to bother you. You know, he said, I want you because with me, you and Wolf was in there already, guitar. He said, we know how to play together. He said, we just play around him and build it up and just everything will be all right. So I said, all right, Neil, tell Oscar to give me a call tomorrow. He said, no, stay near the telephone. You stay near the telephone. I said, man, I'm tired. I've been up all night flying, you know. So I stayed near the phone, and Oscar called. He said, hello, Alvin, how you doing? He said, man, long time no hear. We haven't talked to each other in years. So I said, I got a few things. Can you help me out with them? I said, Oscar, I'll be more than glad to help you with them. Because, see, I lost the opportunity with Norman. One time I got a call from California. I can't think of his name. Ella's piano player. Ella Fitzgerald had 2 gigs in Europe, one in Munich and one in Paris. One of them I couldn't do. And Norman Grant's office had called me. And Harry Sweets Edison said, when Norman called, don't discuss money or nothing, because whatever he give you is going to be double, you know. Mm-hmm. So they called, and they said, well, Alvin, are you available to do Miss Fitzgerald would like to have you for a couple of nights. Can you make it? I said, I got one night in Munich. So then they never called me back for that. That was the first opportunity I was going to join Norman, Ella, and that was way before Oscar, maybe 3 years before Oscar. But then I went with Oscar, and I saw exactly what was happening, and certain things he would say, you just ignore that. Like your father. You wouldn't like it, but you don't talk back to your father. Okay, let it go in one ear, let it go out the other ear. So and so, and then after a while, I became very close to Oscar, and then when Neil died, right there, I thought that was the end of the group. So he said, no, my man, no. That's just one chapter gone. We're going to continue on the group. I got a nice bass player for us. So I knew I was in then. I knew I was very close. So that's how that went.
Wow.
But Neil fixed a whole lot of stuff, man.
Well, he's looking down right now and smiling. I'll tell you, it's just.
Oh yeah, well you got Niels and you got Johnny Griffin and Griff. I was very close to Griff, so they died.
I want to ask you, Alvin, because you did live through the magic of Harlem at a time of a Renaissance period, really for the community and the people. And you have the chops to play, music. What is it in your? What do you feel most important in having to be able to? What do you have to pass on? What is your legacy to pass on to younger generations who are going to grow up in different worlds, but that one day in that enclave somewhere in Russia, or maybe heck knows, in some urban center where this stuff sparks up again and the cycle of life starts again. What are those things that you want to keep breathing into this planet while you're visiting?
Well, the most important thing, what I want to do, the first thing, I always tell young musicians, get this thing out of your head old. You get that out your head. Nothing is old. This is the foundation of it. Okay? So, there's no such a thing as old. This is basic. If you can't do basic, you will not survive it. You see? So, the most important thing, if you're a drummer, learn how to keep time. They don't need drum solos. They need time. Okay? Learn how to swing. Learn how to dig into the music. Listen to people who dig into the music, who are creative. You have a lot of Blue Note records there with Horace Collins, and you got Al Haywood. You didn't hear much of a drum solo, but you heard him swing and dig in. They would dig in. You see? Mickey Roker, they dug in.
Oh, man.
Then you got to learn how to escort musicians. The first thing you need to do is learn jazz, there's what they say, jazz is normal standard Broadway tunes. Learn those tunes because they might put some food on your table so that you can survive. But if you only know your own compositions, no one who can call you. Who can call you to get through? I will get you prepared for the basic. You can do all the rest of the stuff. I do all the rest of the stuff. Right to this day, I can go John Coltrane. I can go out. I can play avant-garde. I can do anything I want to do. But I still can go back to that hotel lounge and play brushes. You see? That's the trick. You see?
Oh, man.
I just did a gig night before last with Philip Catherine.
Wow.
And he just wrote me today. He said, man, that easy does it. And so and so and so. I played on a ballad, a brush solo. He said, Alvin, very few people can do that. I said, because they don't know what the basic is anymore.
It's the rudiments. It's the rudiments.
They don't even have a set of brushes.
It's the rudiments.
You see?
It's the rudiments.
So you have to, I look at it as I'm a drummer. I am not a band leader. I fit in the rhythm section. But I can't play the whole show just drums. I'll drive these people out of here. So the most important thing, I got to know who I am first. That's why it's no ego for me to get along with the band leader. When I walked in here to be your drummer. That's first. Then they always say, Al, you're a featured guest, man, with the technique and with what you got. I said, no, I'm here to escort you first. What are you doing? What would you like to do? And I play different. For every every soloist says something different. The way I would play with bots, I can't play that. I can't play that way with John Handy. They all are saying something different. So you have to learn how to touch them. When I play with Lockjaw Davis, I play a hair behind the beat. I play with Johnny Griffin, a hair a little bit behind. Dexter, a hair a little bit behind. You play with a younger cat, it's a hair above. See, we're talking two different time zones, and that's what makes the drummer. You got to be flexible. You got to be able to move in and out. You know, I worked with Joe Henderson one time, and Joe said, hey, Alvin, do me a favor, man. What's happening, Joe? Drop the hi-hat, drop the sock. You see? Because I had that serious Art Blakely lock-in. James Moody told me once, Queen, no backbeat, baby, no back, straight ahead. Go right for it. You don't get insulted. You just jump right into it. But you got to be versatile.
Yeah, you think that
have to have an open mind.
You think that because some A&R guy, I heard a story once that Mose Allison believed that there was some A&R guy based on the Sidewinder from Lee Morgan. There was a lot of backbeat being played, Bob Crenshaw's bass line. So from then on in, A&R guy said, okay, if we want to make a hit, we just want the drummers to play backbeat. And that was, that album was late 60s. And that Moody quote is insane. It's just like, no backbeat, just straight ahead. As a non-musician, that's quotable. That means something totally different to me than it does to a musician. What it means is...
Well, see, the whole thing about it, it's the backbeat. If the tempo is moving, Clark Terry used to say, Queen, lock it in. Lock it in. You turn around, lock it in, or they turn around, the old cats would say, chop wood, baby, chop wood. So that means, so you're saying, and you were locking it in, because the older guys, that's the heart, that's the pulse is there. You see? And you got to lock it in, or Eleanor Jacquet, or something like that. They want that. They want the drummer to lock as tight as you can and don't move. And that, for me, I was young, so it's hard for me, because I didn't come from that. You see?
I don't want to paint...
And what happened when I left America, I left America as Elvin Jones. I was Elvin Jones at it. And when I came to Europe, then all the older guys came here. Dolo Coker, Leroy Vinnigan, Harry Sweet Edison, Teddy Wilson, okay, Benny Carter, Stephen Capelli. I had to relearn all over again. I had to turn it all out because I couldn't play Elvin Jones on them.
Did you ever play with? Well, you played with Reggie Johnson, but Kirk Lightsey too.
Kirk too, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
did a lot with Kirk.
I just think that that I don't want to paint with a broad brush because But do you notice the younger cats? I guess what I'm trying to get at is what you're talking about is listening. Your job was to set the groove and just listen. And do you find today that if you're going into these sort of philosophical discussions with students, that they are grasping them, or do they just don't have the listening skills and they're off in their own world wanting to create something that is more based on their own ego, as opposed to, I mean, a drummer is different, but what I'm saying is, do they have the listening skills that you did, that Roker did, to lock it in and know that was your role, or has the ego superseded the role of the human?
No, because nobody wants to be old. That's what I'm trying to think.
I'm going to need to go back and listen to this several times before it all is clear. But I'm go ahead, continue.
No, it's a generation. It's like you would say with your father. He's old-fashioned.
Right. Right.
People don't want to be old, so they fit in they go another way, and they go the way with everybody else. You see what I'm talking about? You understand me?
Yes. So what
I'm really saying is just that, if I told you, come on, man, so many guys got messed up with alcohol, drugs, and everything because they want to be hip. Okay? So it's the same thing, man. Why are you playing that square music? That's old-fashioned. Come on, you got to be modern.
Uh-huh.
You see, you got to be modern. So people do things just because other people they're following.
Right, but then they don't want to be old. They want to be modern. Yeah. They
want to be modern. So what happens, you could be so modern that you don't even have an audience no more. You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah, no, it's crystal.
See, the younger generation, what happens with Mickey Roker and what happens to people like myself, I was taught one thing. That's the audience. They buy the records. They support me. You understand what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. And they have a right to be a part of what I'm giving them. Okay? When I disown that audience, I'm on my own egotistic. You see? So that means if we're writing all this music in this band, who the hell are we writing for? This is competition between us. Because those people, if they can't groove and pat their foot and be a part of this, then they pay the money to come here. And that's what Horace has always taught me. Oscar has always taught me to be a part, make this group happen. When the group happens, the people in the audience feels that.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't happen by reading all this stuff. It happens on an instinct from the heart. We can play the same tune. A different night, something else is going to happen musically. We're creating. It's going somewhere. So the most important thing, we can't go nowhere without the warm environments of that audience. The audience gives me just as much as the musicians give me. You can have a boring-looking audience, and you'll get depressed just sitting on the stage trying to play music to them. You see? So it's something where in environment, I like people. I want to see them smile. I want to see them rock in their chairs. I want to see them get up and dance.
That's right. Well, that's what the music
was.
That's
what he did when he played Mona. No shuffles, and Along Came Betty, and Killer Joe, and all of that. Art always entertained, played his drum solos, but he always had one to rock that out. Jimmy Smith rocked that. I remember Lonnie Smith. He would have that organ, You can hear the sound of it and feel it through the walls. It'll be going, and the people say, yeah, let me have another drink, man. These cats are into it. You see? So you have to, I don't just want to get up there and play. What am I playing for? You know, or you put who's the fastest drummer and technique and all that. It doesn't mean anything to me. You know, that's not telling me a story. It's, you know, we're not riding racing cars. You know, we're playing a reality, a feeling, which comes from inside. So I mean, that's where I'm at. That's how I see things. And if there's anybody young who want to get on the boat, then I can guide them the correct way. I'll give you an experience. I played at the Umbria Jazz Festival a couple of years ago, me and Donald Maroney and everything. I won't mention no name, but these people are very popular. We turn the theater out. There's five decks up, okay? Classical theater. Turn it out. Packed during the day. Prince was playing that night. Packed. I went back and sat in the lobby of the hotel. I heard this girl drummer tell the other people, right there, I'm sitting right there sweating, just taking it in. Yeah, I heard some of the goodest old jazz. I heard a good old jazz set just played. Man, they were on fire over there. And she looked at me and said, oh, you were the drummer.
Yeah.
You see, so I mean, they have a different meaning for the word, you know.
Seeing is...
Remember, jazz is Grover Washington Jr. Remember that. See, when you hear Grover and when you hear a lot of stuff like that, and you hear George Benson today, that's a commercial form of music.
Right.
Jazz makes money, but not in that like that does. You know, if you look at Billie Holiday's records, they're selling more records a day than ever sold. You see? So jazz, you know, commercial music is overnight, is here today, and a lot of times gone tomorrow. That's what that's all about.
Well, this is just origins upon origins. I have to ask you. You know, you talked about the feeling of loneliness without Grands and Ray Brown and you know, recently Marianne McPartland. You know, and some of these stalwarts. And you got that lonely feeling. I look around at you, Harvey Mason, Chuck Rainey, Bernard Purdy. You know, the list goes on and on and on. But are you? I mean, why are you lonely? Unless that family has kind of broken apart, because it's kind of your turn. That's really why I've asked you to step up. Is to tell these stories, you know, and because I think there's a void in leadership. That Oscar, you know, that's what my book is about. That's what my radio show is about. You know, it is about leadership leading through life experiential life experiences and love, and that's it. And so that's a large task. And I'm asking of you guys, is that a scare? Scary is the wrong word. It's just, you know, we've talked a lot about, you know, intergenerational stuff. And I just say to myself, you know, what do you have to say left in order to give people opportunities to access what you lived through?
Well, the whole thing about it, I don't know how the world really works. but we are all standing there waiting for the opportunity, right, which very seldom that comes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you, brother.
Where is the guy who picks up the phone and let me call Alvin Queen, let me call Bernard Purdy? You don't have to call Alvin Queen, but where is the guy who picks up the phone and say, hey, look, we got $250,000 and we'd like to start a group of Bernard Purdy and the Messages and whatever it is. See, because in the recording industrial world, groups introduce you to record labels. Everybody in Art Blakey group became successful. Everybody in John Coltrane group became successful. I was in Jimmy Garrison's last group. He didn't become successful. You see?
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy had a group with George Braith, myself, Ronnie Matthews, and Joaquin Folks before he died. He had a loft in East Village. But the whole thing, Alvin Jones didn't become successful. Alvin was working after he left training at Pookie's Pub, and he had Joe Farrell with him, Jimmy Garrison. Okay?
Gene
And he
Perla.
had Steve Grossman with him. He had different places right across the street at this little dump, Pookie's Pub, across from the old half note down on Canal Street, Hudson Street. Okay? So the most important thing, it took Alvin a good while to get on his feet. And he went to Japan or whatever, and he came back, and he had Keiko there, and all of a sudden you start seeing something blooming, 10, 15 years after. I don't know why it is that type of a struggle for people who would have so much of a leadway. I don't understand how they can be overlooked or walk past or whatever. But we don't get that type of... If we had that sponsorship, we could represent more young people.
That's
you
right.
See what I'm saying?
I don't think I've heard it articulated better as far as a leadership goal of just having, George Benson, David Sanborn, commercial music. I don't think Alvin Jones that was not in his vernacular, and he was down at that pub with guys like Gene Perla. Gene Perla owes.
I remember all that.
Yeah, and Gene Perla owes his musical soul to Alvin for that. That's what's. It's just that's what. And I remember, the late George Duke. He said it to me. We need more gut bucket guys, but it's beyond that. It's the inability of people to recognize how important the medium of improvisational music is, and the kind of values that can come out of it, and there's a stranglehold on it. I mean, and it's I feel like the only way to kind of break that is to have people that can talk about these things without a filter. So I mean, it really.
Well, see, the whole thing about it for me, I've lived. You understand what I'm talking about?
You went through it.
And for me, I'm very, I got. The Swiss mountains walking. I got photography as my hobby. I'm 63 years old. Hey, man, I'm in good shape, But I would like to share, and I would like to put groups together where guys stay for a year or 2 years and be featured that way so that you can give these kids the exposure, what they need to get on their feet and everything. Because a lot of these kids, they go to this conservatory, they come out the conservatory, and they just standing there, you see? So I would like to really, it's like I have to leave this planet. But what I got, I would like to give it to somebody or share it with somebody before I go. There's a reason why we're here. The wisdom that you know. You understand what I'm talking about? You're loaded full of the wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
You understand?
Mm-hmm.
But how could you make society make you really heard, really where a lot more of the world can hear what you got to say?
That's right.
If we had more people like you, a lot of things might work. You see what I'm talking about? So it's just like, I don't know why you want to do right and people want to hide the right. You see what I'm talking about?
I need to